Hey y'all, good morning. Hope you're doing good today. So I just wanted to have a discussion with you today that gives you something to think about, that it's kind of like obvious, you know, on one hand, but on the other hand, it's sort of like just taking a second look to just allow like this deeper truth to surface. Let me just kind of relate this to this episode of Bluey I saw. I know I referenced that cartoon a lot, but it's really great. So the kids, Bluey and Bingo, wanted their dad to play a game with them and to pretend that he was born yesterday and that he was new to this world, essentially, right? And it was really cute. It was funny. So obviously he talked with them and everything, but he pretended like he didn't know what anything was. You know, like what a chair was, what a name was. He just kind of operated that way throughout the day as they went through their day together. And they had to explain everything to him, and they thought it was really, you know, fun. Well, when the game was over at the end of the episode, it shows the kids, I think, like in the kitchen in the house with the mom, and her name's Chili. It's cute because they have, you know, their dogs. They have dog names, and so the dad's name is Bandit, right? And the mom's name is Chili. And so she's looking out the window, and you don't know what she's looking at, and she goes, "Hey kids, are y'all still playing Born Yesterday with your dad?" And they're like, "No." And she says, "Okay." And then it shows what she's looking at outside the window, and it's Bandit, it's the dad, holding a leaf up, just totally fascinated by it, you know, just really absorbing it and looking, you know, just really deeply at it, and the sunlight hitting it, and it kind of zooms in on the leaf, you know, to show like all the different patterns within it, and it just kind of goes so zooms in so far that it's like you see the structure of it, like the molecules or atoms or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and they kind of, the way they do it, I love this cartoon. It's so well made. It's like they just kind of show, you know, the light reflecting through it and all the little sparkles. And so the point is, it kind of just adds to, through their art, their artistic representation of this moment. It's like highlighting the numinosity of life, you know, that numinous element, the spiritual element, the magical element of life, which we talk about a lot on my channel. It was really, really a cool little episode, and they're only like 10 minutes long, you know. They're just great. But that's going to be a big part of what we're talking about today. You know, a lot of our discussions are related to this higher wisdom, this kind of subtle element to this existence and our experience as humans in this reality that's kind of hard to put our finger on. It's kind of like this element that is of the spiritual realm, but nobody really knows how to define it. You know, you can't fit it in a box, so to speak. And so we're going to kind of just take a close look at that and bring a little bit of logic to it, since that's how we operate, right? Through our minds as human beings, and we're going to talk about that. So I hope you enjoy it, and I just hope you're doing good. And I really hope that I'm able to bring you some things of interest, and hopefully you'll be inspired from what I'm able to offer you today. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive in. So, you know, I feel like when we are interacting with this reality, just daily in our just everyday mundane life, it's like we take things for granted. And just like that cartoon, that episode highlighted, if we just, you know, pause long enough to just you know, to just kind of clear away all of this clutter, you might say, that we have just kind of bunching up in our minds and just overshadowing reality, that's when things kind of surface for us. That's when we also, ironically or not so ironically, tend to feel some good feelings like peace and hope and inspiration, see? And so we're going to talk about this this balance that we need to have, you know, as we're coming out of, you know, toxic situations and we're trying to get back in balance. See, it's kind of like, where's that sweet spot where we feel, you know, like, okay, I'm starting to finally get back in balance, and I'm starting to understand what it means to live from a place of peace and things like that. We're just trying to define that for ourselves and make sense of it so that we can head into every day with some clarity, because that matters. You know what I mean? You know, if you think about it, miracles, or what you might call miracles, again, feel free to apply your own label or term or whatever. Miracles are exemplified every day in nature, you know, and that's just it. How often do we spend time in nature? You know, I mean, our lives are busy. And so if you're blessed enough to be able to spend a lot of time in nature, then, you know, it's, I think it's very transformative for us, you know, when we can, the more time we can spend there. But these miracles, because I feel like we're conditioned by modern society, just in our mind, it's kind of like, even if we leave work or we leave the busyness, like if we go on vacation or something, it's kind of like our minds are still kind of stuck in you know, spinning the wheels of busyness, and because of that, it's kind of like this covering or this veil that makes it where even if we're immersed in nature, we take it for granted. We're not able to truly see it. And then instead of just, you know, our daily habits that are just really not fulfilling, you know, with modern society, instead of that being just kind of boring and mundane, which I feel like is the way it should be, we should view it that way. It's like, instead of that, we actually tend to view nature as boring and mundane, when it's not. It's just that our minds are so focused in the wrong place on the wrong things, because we have to. I mean, it's not to, you know, criticize ourselves or blame ourselves. It's just, that's the way it is to, you know, be a part of this society, to pay our bills, you know what I mean? To try and be, you know, a good citizen, just to put, you know, food on the table for our families. So it's not to blame, you know, anybody. It's just recognizing what we can get stuck in, and just kind of detailing that out, how we get stuck, you know, in what ways, so that it'll help us to be conscious of it, so that you can't make a choice to disentangle yourself from something if you don't first identify what it is you're entangled in. That's so important. So but that's what happens. It's like it gets flip-flopped, and we find ourselves just kind of taking nature for granted and feeling like it's just boring. And even if we're right in the middle of it in a beautiful place, our mind can just be focused on our to-do list or whatever. See, if we're willing to work at being conscious of these things so that we can see clearly, it's going to help us to see how amazing nature really is, right? We're going to break it down today too. But it's like, just like the dad in that episode, Bandit, his name's Bandit on Bluey, you know, he was like, you know, surprised just as an adult, even though he's been here on this earth for a long time, just to pick up a leaf and just really look at it. It's like it was just amazing and surprising for him. See, and it can be the same for us, right? Once we exit this matrix or this web of just busyness, right? And what's even worse, I think one thing that keeps us just heavily entrenched or enmeshed in this mindset, you know, this mind trap, essentially, is the fact that as humans, it's like we can find ourselves becoming proud of our intellect, proud of our ability to think as much as we do. You know what I mean? It's not like it's bad. I mean, God gave us that ability for a reason, I think. You know what I mean? But it's just it's kind of like you know, God gave us this ability, and instead of just using it for maybe what it was intended for, we just took it and, you know, just injected it with steroids and just made it this big, huge thing. And because of that, you know, like this big egoic thing, but we don't realize it because it's supported through all of society to just really inflate or overinflate our intellect and, you know, its uses and stuff. It's kind of like it becomes this block. It obstructs our view from what really matters. And therefore, it's kind of like we've normalized living out of balance, just as a collective, all of us together. You see what I'm saying? So as we're trying to, you know, exit toxic situations or environments, or whatever, relationships, and we're trying to get back in balance ourselves, I think it's important to look at the bigger picture and see where, you know, all of us as a collective are out of balance too, because that affects us, you know. Last thing we want to do is fall back into another trap and just continue living out of balance. So it's not easy to do. It's not easy to go against the grain, for sure, right? Just like the Bible verse talks about, you know, to be in the world but not of it. It's certainly a challenge. But it's kind of like collectively we act like the more we invest in growing this intellect we have, this ability to reason and sort things out in our minds and label things and make sense of things and think stuff to death. It's like we act like the more that we invest in that, then it's like making progress. It's like it progresses us in some way and will benefit, and the world will benefit from it, and so on and so forth. And I just challenge you to consider this. What would it feel like to experience existence or life as like a goose? I love geese. I love them. But just imagine, what would that be like? I want you to think about, you know, how awesome it is that geese migrate. And other kind of birds do too. Just, they came to my mind first. But they migrate. And they actually use these invisible elements of our reality, which we give, I feel like, I don't want to speak for everyone and make an absolute statement, but I feel like in general, we tend to just totally ignore what we can't see, what we can't detect readily. You know, these invisible, or you might say numinous qualities of this reality, but they're there. They're there. How much are we missing out on, see? Because we're not giving them the credence that they deserve. But they migrate with the magnetic field, right? And if you think about that, if you take this concept, because you know, it's kind of like automatic with them, instinctive. It's normal for them. It feels like a total enigma to us. But if you think about how all animals and even plants, you know, like when they germinate and sprout, how do they know to do what they do? It's hard for us to really grasp, you know, because we have reasoning, right? So of course, to dig a little bit deeper, I went to Google. I asked Google to show me some kind of content about if language is required for reasoning. Okay, and it kind of seems to me like it is, or it should be that way. But I actually found some recent studies that are saying, like they were examining infants, you know, like pre-language, that they are capable of reasoning, you know, without language. So studies are showing that language is not required for reasoning. Isn't that interesting? And yet we use it just day in and day out, constantly, for our reasoning. This is really important here, okay? How heavily dependent we are on language. I want you to think about even when you're thinking. When you're thinking, are you thinking in words? I do. So even our thoughts are affected by language. Maybe they only exist because of language, a thought. Something to think on, right? Something to chew on, marinate in. So why is it that people can achieve things like deep peace or even big revelations in a meditative state, in meditation? Why is that? It's like when you're trying to consciously quiet your mind. You may have heard of the term monkey brain or monkey mind, you know, because it's like just wanting attention all the time, you know. It's kind of like it takes effort to turn it off. That in itself ought to be a red flag there, that there's something up with the thought process, the thinking process, again, which I think is meant for good and God-given, is part of his design of humanity, but there's something there that we need to pay attention to. So when people meditate, right, you're trying to quiet that thought process, turn the language piece off and be still, just like the Bible verse. Excuse me, y'all. I'm getting better there. I keep saying that, but I really am. The Bible verse that says, you know, be still and know that I am God. When we're able to kind of quiet the mind, that's when things surface like magic. That's a big deal to me, because how do we try to go about understanding things, or, you know, getting to a resolution when we have an issue? We think it to death, don't we? We think that that's making progress, that we're doing good, when we're trying to just solve everything this way, thinking with our words and with language and reasoning this way. And a lot of times we're spinning our wheels. And yet, you can just sit for 15 minutes, quiet your mind, and you have what's called a revelation. Where does that come from? A lot of times it doesn't come from all this striving with our mind, with thinking and language. It comes from somewhere else. Where is that? See, that's the numinous aspect of this reality, this higher wisdom. But it's just cool, isn't it, to have experiences like that? It's like it just shakes us awake, and we just wake up to this higher level of awareness. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what just happened? You know? And for a long time, you know, before you have an experience like that, it's, you don't know what you don't know, you know, but it's beautiful when you do wake up and you realize that that's a thing. But my point is, all this brings me back to the concept of language. It's almost like language is what is creating confusion for us. It's like this soft and subtle layer covering up our true nature, which is the way God intended for us to operate in this reality. So just go with me for a minute, all right? So like, we think that knowledge obtained using language, all of our studying, all of our research, all of our thinking, all of our processing with language, we think that knowledge obtained using language is going to protect us and serve us in some way. But I just want you to consider dogs as another example. It's like they can detect danger and protect themselves and, you know, their offspring and their families, their human families and everything. They can detect danger intuitively. They don't have to reason things out with language. It's an instinct. So my point is language truly equivalent to empowerment? It's something to think about. And when I say language, I mean like all that encompasses too. I mean like everything. Language and thinking and research and processing and, you know, all the workings of the mind, you know. Is it truly equivalent to empowerment? Or is it possibly disempowering? In other words, are we victims of our own way of processing? Of operating. Are we victims of our own way of operating, right? It's like we've normalized it. It's even celebrated in our modern culture. You know, you get all these accolades and these, you know, these diplomas and these, you know, recognition and everything. You get all that, right? The more you use your brain, your mind, right? So we've normalized it. We've celebrated it. So we don't recognize that this could actually be in our way. Because what if it wasn't in our way? Would revelations be so random and few and far in between? Or would it be just a way of life? Could you imagine that being a way of life? Like animals and nature? It just makes me think of the story in the Bible, you know, about the Tower of Babel. And I'm not super familiar with it. And again, I'm certainly not a Bible expert by any means, but I just want to propose the concept here in a new light. If we think about the symbolism here, you know, like from the, you know, overarching theme and the expanded view, it's like, you know, they were building this tower to heaven or to God, right? You might consider, you know, they were trying to achieve the same level of wisdom as God, like to be on that same level. We're looking at this like symbolically, right? So God's response was to scatter everyone into different languages, okay? He made communication, language, a challenge. Was it a punishment? This is my question for you to consider. Was it a punishment or instruction? Was it meant to be a revelation? But it was documented and viewed and taken as punishment. So let me ask you this. Does God need language? I think we know the answer, right? Don't you think of God more like telepathic? I do. What if he was trying to show humanity the answer? And taking the ability to connect dots and communicate with language. Like there's another way. What if he was trying to provide the opportunity for this revelation? See? But humanity viewed it as punishment, right? So what's interesting here is we can do this a lot, you know, misperceiving things. I feel like we don't recognize this, but I feel like because, you know, it's plainly laid out in the Bible that this realm is is governed by the darkness, the devil. Like, you know, it's like a demonic realm, but we don't think of it that way. But it's stated as that, essentially, that he has, the devil has, you know, control. And I mean, it flat out says that we are sent out as sheep amidst the wolves. So, you know, I talk a lot about the mindset of lack or a victim mindset. I think most of us would say, yeah, we may have slipped into that mindset here and there. And there's some people who, unfortunately, live out most of their lives in that mindset. But I think most of us would say we don't operate that way just all the time throughout our lives. But what if we do, but we don't even recognize that? Here's what I mean. In looking at, you know, what God did as a response to the Tower of Babel, and looking at that as a punishment, and because of doing that, we potentially missed the whole point of what his response was. It's like, why would we have done that? What would have caused us to not see clearly? A victim mindset. Now, what creates a victim mindset? Being hurt. What creates hurt? Evil in this world. Experiencing trauma and bad things in this world. Where does that come from? The darkness. The devil. Demons, you might say. You see kind of how this all ties together? I'm trying to, for myself, and I'm just sharing it with you all, I'm trying to connect dots in a way that it makes sense so that I can be empowered and consciously choose not to have these blockages in my way. I want to be able to see things clearly. And I just encourage you to try and work at that too. Because what if we are viewing things from a victim mindset and not even realizing it? See? And that's actually creating this blockage to seeing things clearly. It's just something to think about. You know what I mean? So again, what if instead of viewing God's response in that example as punishment, we realized his response was the answer to wanting to be like God? They're building this tower to get closer to God, to be on his level, to reach God. And he responds, and they're like, oh man, this is awful and punishment. But he's like, no, that's the answer. I don't need language. I'm telepathic. What if he created us to be the same way, but in our desire to take things on ourselves in the Garden of Eden by eating the fruit, see, because of deception with the serpent, you know, maybe that's when reasoning was born. They were naked. And then suddenly they reasoned, oh, we better hide ourselves. And God's like, why are you hiding? And they're like, well, because we thought we should. He's like, see how the thinking starts? See how the reasoning, the trust in God's directions, that was cut off there. And it's like they took that on for themselves, the reasoning. You see what I'm saying? So, again, when you're in a victim mindset, you can't see or hear clearly. And how many of us have not been affected by trauma or being hurt? I mean, come on. You see what I'm saying? The harshness of the darkness of this reality affects all of us at some point. So, but when you're healed or healthy, you can see and hear clearly. See? It's like the difference between living behind this cloudy lens. You can see, but it's real cloudy, but you've normalized it. You think it's normal, and you don't know any different. Versus looking through this crystal clear looking glass. Let me just share something personal with y'all. When I was young, I mean like all the way up until I was 8, I couldn't see well, but I didn't know that I couldn't see well because I didn't know any different. I normalized out of not having anything to compare it to the way I could see. I thought everybody saw the way I did, right? It's reasonable, isn't it? And then I went to school, you know, and I did okay the first few years. And then about 3rd grade, I started to struggle because I couldn't see the board. But here's what's really interesting. Through the eyes and mind of a child, I didn't realize I couldn't see the board. Again, remember, your thinking is limited to your paradigms. Whatever belief structures you have in your mind is going to affect your thinking. So I couldn't see the board, but I didn't realize I couldn't see the board. I thought that this was how everybody saw. So it's like it didn't click for some reason. And so, excuse me, I thought something was wrong, but I didn't know. It's like there was something, you know, just off. But again, you can't put your finger on it. Well, anyway, it wasn't until 4th grade when my teacher realized, oh, you know, she can't see. And she had to, you know, mention that to my parents. So long story short, I went and got glasses in 4th grade. And y'all, I cried the whole way home. And even when I got home, because I thought that our wall, like looking at I could see the leaves on the trees. I didn't know anybody could see those. I knew they had leaves, but I didn't know you could see them. Unbelievable experience. Absolutely unbelievable. When we got home, I didn't know, but it was back in the day, you know, that our wallpaper had a pattern. I thought it was just kind of all one color. It was a whole new world because I could see clearly, crystal clear. So it's just a great analogy to share with y'all here. And I just encourage you to be like Bandit on Bluey and just kind of look at the world, you know, pause and take time out of your busy day. I know that we're all busy. I know we are. And things are crazy and all this stuff. But just kind of break up your day as you can, you know, on purpose, and make time for it, because it should be a priority to just pause and slow down and just really see things clearly. Try to turn off that monkey mind, you know, and just, you know, quiet it and still, you know, get to a still place and just see if you don't have revelations, and just try to, you know, just like I was encouraging you the other day to define what peace is to you, I just also encourage you to define what revelations mean for you, you know. And so I just hope that this gives you a lot to think about. I hope that it's encouraging and inspiring, and I thank you for coming along to hear the message, and I will see you again very soon. I hope that you have a beautiful day. And by the way, I won't be posting again until early next week if you're watching this the day it's posted. So the rest of the week, I just hope it's a great week for you, and I'll see you again very soon.